Again, because I'm nervous, want to confirm, Mr. St. Andre, could you confirm that you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. Before we have the meeting called to order, I just want to welcome everyone, and for those that are new to the meeting, let you know, as you may see on the agenda, there will be time for public participation at the end of the meeting. There also will be an opportunity for public participation on any item on which the commission will be voting prior to the vote being taken. So if a vote is going to be taken, I will first call for public participation. If anyone wants to make a comment, if you're joining us online, you can indicate by raising your hand or in the chat. If you're here in person, you can just wave me down. And with that, I turn it over to Chairperson Dragovich.
Roll call.
Call the meeting to order. I didn't know.
I'm calling to order the meeting of the Illinois Forensic Science Commission on Wednesday, March 11th, 2026 at 10:03 a.m. We're going to start with roll call of commission members. You just want to go around the table.
I can do it. I have a roll.
Amy's going to call names.
Craig Dragovich.
Present.
Brendan Kelly is not present. Deputy Director Robin Woolery.
Present.
Dr. Arun Kumar.
Present.
Ms. Baker.
Present.
Mr. Buford.
Present.
Ms. Drummond.
Present.
Judge Hill.
Present.
Ms. Hughes is ill, so she will not be at this meeting today. Dr. Hughes.
Present.
Ms. Ryhill.
Present.
Ms. Tucker.
Present.
Mr. St. Andre.
Present.
Ms. Ward.
Present.
Okay, and then I am going to call out members of the public here in person. We have Timothy Rupel and Sarah Ware. Is that correct? And then I will identify the people I see on the screen. Amy Miles, Edmund Laube, Gina Havlick, or I think it's Laub, sorry. Gina Havlick, Jan Johnson, Kevin McMahon, Lindsay Simpson, and Amanda Shanbaum. Is there Maya Dukmasova? Is there anyone else that's present on those through those WebEx links that wants to identify themselves? Okay, I think roll call is complete.
Great. I would just like to say good morning and welcome to everyone for our first in-person meeting of 2026. I'm very excited to work with you all in a just slightly different capacity, but still pretty much the same. I'd like to thank all of you who, whether you've been here from the beginning of the process with the commission or you just came on more recently, everyone's unique perspectives are invaluable to this process and the work that we conduct. And so I just want to thank you all for your continued participation and commitment to the work of the commission. We're going to move into review and adoption of minutes. Does anyone have any questions on the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Carrie Ward, so moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nays? It passes. And we move on to our executive director summary from Amy Wetruba.
Okay, I'm gonna just take a minute to share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'll start with just general comments. We have a very packed discussion portion of the agenda, so I'm going to move through these kind of quickly. The first is to talk about the fact that I'm going to be moving forward based on comments in subcommittee meetings and the commission in general in figuring out how to set up a LinkedIn account for the commission. It'll probably be a very basic LinkedIn account where we can just post information and share content, links to meetings, things like that, at least at the beginning. So I'm going to work through how to do that both on the LinkedIn and also through our administrative agency. A couple of website updates. The section of the page that has all your bios has been updated to make it a little more clear that that's where you go to get information about the commission, and all of your bios for the most part and photos have been updated. I think I'm just waiting on one more photo. And then also, I just wanted to share with you, so we created under the resources page, when we added the fundamentals of forensic science videos after the last meeting, thinking ahead, knowing that we were going to add more, we set it up like this, so it provides a little information about it, about the videos, and then lets everyone know what's available with links, what's coming, and then also an opportunity, at least in the short term, if there's any comments, just once again, giving that email address for feedback. For legislative updates, the legislation tracking chart is up in the shared space. I didn't want to, there's a few that we're going to be talking about during discussion items, but just in general topics that are the subject of bills that are pending right now are, I'm going to say this wrong, is it kratom or kratom? Kratom. Schedule 1 substances, xylazine. There's one for the vehicle code regarding cannabis in vehicles. What kind of packaging they need to be in. There's a proposed change to the DUI limit, lowering it to 0.05. There's a couple of bills related to the DNA database, and there's one related to identification of human remains. Senate Bill 1889, which you have previously agreed to support in its form from was first introduced, is active again. It's in the cannabis subcommittee, so I'll continue to take steps in support of that based on your previous decision. And then the two bills that we'll talk about in discussion today are House Bill 4498 and Senate Bill 2998. Education outreach. So I'll be speaking in April. I kind of worked my way into the Illinois Division of the International Association for Identification. I invited myself. So they're going to allow me to give a presentation about the commission. So I'm excited about that. And I am going to also attend the entire 3-day conference. So I'm hoping that'll be a really great way to get our name out to a lot of people locally in the state. I attended, once again, the FSB conference will be in October in Milwaukee, and it is close by, so I'm hoping that a lot of people will be able to attend. And then the only conference I attended since our last meeting was the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. As I had mentioned, there were I have reported back to the subcommittees on presentations that were relevant to their work. I think I had mentioned that there were 2 presentations that were going to touch on the specific issue of THC testing at AFDL. One just mentioned it in the course of a kind of a broader examination of errors in toxicology nationwide. The other one that was specific to AFDL, the speaker from Illinois who was supposed to give the presentation at the last minute could not make it. So someone else just stood up and basically just read from the abstract. So unfortunately, there was nothing new to report on that one. And I know Ms. Ryhill was there, Ms. Hughes, or Dr. Hughes, were you there as well? And I know Dr. Arukumar was there too. So I thought it was a very good conference. Next year's theme, I think, is something related to like space and the future. Not quite sure where that's going. And that's all I had.
Okay, moving into subcommittee reports, we're going to start with quality systems. I am the chair of that. My update is that the Quality Systems Subcommittee has completed their review of the UIC AFDL report, and it's up for the work product we generated is up for discussion later in the meeting. We also can report that we received responses from all the 17025 labs in Illinois in compliance with the significant nonconformity reporting, and we will start working on that report at our next meetings. Next up, we have training and career development. Karen Tucker.
Morning. The Training and Career Development Subcommittee met monthly, and the video for firearm and tool marks has been completed. This is a discussion item for later in the meeting. The biology, DNA, toxicology sections, and trace are all currently still creating context, and their estimate for delivery to the commission is the June meeting. We've been working with the executive director regarding marketing of these videos and tracking of how many views we're getting on the videos. Possibilities that we've discussed for continuing in 2026 is an ethics training course, or another possibility that we've discussed is using the commission as a convener for stakeholders and maybe offering some panel discussions or speaker series in the future.
Public policy, Katie Drummond, please.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. The Public Policy Subcommittee met twice since the last commission meeting. During those meetings, the subcommittee discussed and drafted the proposed complaint resource document that will be addressed later during the discussion portion of this meeting. The subcommittee has also begun discussing other topics to address this year, including the changes to the QAS for the use of rapid DNA and freestanding DNA databases.
Thank you. Technology, Jeff Buford.
Yes, good morning. The Technology Subcommittee met twice since our last meeting in December. A couple of highlights of what we discussed. Primarily, we moved back to a topic that we had earlier in our discussions regarding emerging technologies. Our toxicology subject matter expert presented to the subcommittee the new technology in which they're doing a validation study on for QTOF, which will be part of their workflow once this work is done. It will enhance certain aspects of their workflows concerning more specified screening, detection, and enhanced sensitivity. Additionally, we discussed one of the discussion items that will be part of our agenda later, ASPLAD's AI statement as it related to our discussions as the technology. We'll get into that later in discussion, and that's what we have for technology.
Thank you. Forensic Investigative Genetic Genealogy, Dr. Hughes.
Okay, we met twice since the last commission meeting, and we continue to draft the FAQ document and the other resources that we're working on to hopefully get on the commission's website this year. This is the year. And then we also had the opportunity at our meeting last week to connect with some of our state units that are doing genetic genealogy. So the FBI's genetic genealogy unit and then the CPD's unit that's coming up, and we're hoping to invite them to either this next coming meeting or the one after that to learn more about what they're doing and see how we can weave that into the resources.
Thank you. Drugs, Jill Baker.
Good morning. The Drug Subcommittee has met twice since the last commission meeting. We've discussed how we will share information with stakeholders. We do have a discussion item for later in the agenda regarding sharing information about drugs identified. We've also been discussing how we will gather information about emerging drugs, and that information would be on controlled substances, or drugs that are not controlled yet, but just what we're seeing and not identifying, which may be an emerging drug situation. So that information is something that we're not quite sure yet how we would want to disseminate that, or if we would want to disseminate that through the commission. We have also been working on a project to evaluate and compare the Illinois Controlled Substances Act to the federal statutes for gaps, and discussing legislative updates, as Amy had mentioned, having to do with CROTM and the Illinois Controlled Substances Act.
Thank you. We're moving on to issues for discussion, and the first action and discussion we have is selection of Commission Vice Chairperson. Amy.
Hello. So as you know, since Ms. Dragovich was our vice chairperson and she's now our chairperson, we opened it up for nominations for vice chairperson. We had multiple nominations for one person. So Mr. Buford was nominated for the position of vice chairperson. He has graciously agreed to be considered. So that is something that all we need to do basically is we'll have to open for public comment first, but do a roll call vote on if everyone's great with that. Okay, it is a voting item, so if anyone from the public wishes to offer public comment before we vote on the topic of Mr. Buford as vice chairperson, please indicate. I see no comments, so if someone could make a motion.
Dragovich makes a motion for Jeff Buford to become the vice chair of the commission.
This is Art Hill. I second that motion.
Right, I'm going to do a roll call vote for this one. So Claire Dragovich?
Yes.
Jeff Buford?
Yes.
Robin Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Runkumar?
Yes.
Jill Baker,
Yes.
Katie Drummond,
Yes.
Judge Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes is absent, Dr. Hughes,
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill,
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre,
Yes.
Ms. Tucker,
Yes.
Ms. Ward. Yes. All right, motion passes. We welcome our Vice Chairperson, Jeff Buford.
Okay, moving on to our second discussion and possible action item from our technology subcommittee, a recommendation for a statement related to artificial intelligence.
If you want, I'll start, and then Mr.
Yes,
Buford, if you want to join any, yeah,
You can
I'm happy
start.
to do that, sure. So as Mr. Buford has explained it, multiple times, the technology subcommittee spent a fair amount of time discussing AI over the past year, had a number of guest speakers, people brought back information from conferences and other relevant resources. And while they moved on, the ASCLD statement was issued. And so that was discussed at a subcommittee meeting, and the topic of putting the ASCLD statement out there as a resource on our website was brought up. And then that evolved into, how about a statement of the commission going along with it? So the statement, the proposed statement that you have in your materials, basically just provides a little background on the subcommittee's work, and essentially states that, summarizes the ASCLD statement, and then expresses that it's consistent with the findings essentially of the subcommittee. Mr. Buford?
Thank you. In summary, this proposed statement is to demonstrate the alignment of the technology subcommittee core forensic disciplines, various discussions that we had with ASCLD's statement is as if ASCLD was actually in our meetings, because they overlap so well that it was proposed that for the alignment of what we discussed, our proposals and our discoveries of where AI fits in forensics operations, along with ASCLD's detailed statement, we were agreeing on the scope and felt necessary to propose a statement to show the overlap and agreement with ASCLD from the technology subcommittee and being proposed to the Forensic Science Commission for adoption.
So the thought would be, if approved, that the commission's statement, along with the ASCLD statement attached, would then be posted on the commission's website under the resources tab. Or actually, well, we could do it under the statements, the reports tab or the resources. You think under the
You mentioned the statement tab.
statement tab, yeah, it's actually reports, but that's where our other statements are, so that's.
For consistency and for clarity, I believe that's the best place to put it.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any discussion on that item? We would just need a motion. We'll do a roll call as well.
Make a motion that we accept the proposed statement for the use of artificial intelligence on our statements page. Dr. Runkmeyer, second.
Do a roll call. Ms. Dragovich?
Yes.
Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly is absent, so Ms. Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Runkmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Judge Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Who's absent? Dr. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill?
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
And Ms. Ward?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. Get that up. I will say now, I'll say it again at the end of the meeting. We have a number of items that if they're passed at this meeting, will need to go up on the website. That is probably going to take a little bit of time because of the number of items, but I will be prioritizing them, which I'll discuss at the end.
Moving on to our third item for discussion and possible action, fundamentals of forensic science video on firearms and toolmarks discipline.
I'll start and then Ms. Tucker can join in. So then through email, we received the draft video, or excuse me, the finalized video for firearms and tool marks. It is 21 minutes in length, so unfortunately we can't play it during the meeting. For your review, it contains the same introductory portion of the video as the other disciplines, and then it contains the content. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. If anyone has any comments, thoughts, again, Immense thanks to everyone in the Training and Career Development Subcommittee and the subject matter experts who have just joined in for this video project. It's been very time and labor intensive, but hopefully worthwhile.
I'd like to just sort of congratulate Karen, but also all the other folks who worked on all the other videos. They're doing it on their own time. They have their day jobs and still they volunteer their time and hard work and their expertise to put these videos together. Karen's expertise shows through in this video and as well as the other folks who helped her on it. So I never want the moment to pass without thanking these hardworking forensic scientists who take time out from their day-to-day jobs to put together these videos. And I think it's a really, really good thing. So I just wanted to be sure that we acknowledge Karen, everybody else, all the other subject matter experts who have volunteered their time to put these videos together.
Thank you. Anyone else? So similar to the other videos, I'm going to suggest that the motion that is made is to both approve the video, but then also to give the subcommittee the ability to make any changes necessary over time. Obviously minor changes because they may need to change a slide here and there as things evolve. So if someone wants to make that motion.
I make a motion that we approve the firearms video along with allowing the subcommittee to make any minor or substantive changes to the video.
Jean Hill, I second the motion.
Great, I'll do a roll call again. Ms. Dragovich?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Do we need public comment?
Oh, you're right, Judge, you're right. I'm sorry, you're right.
Just to throw that
I forgot to do it before the AI statement. That's my bad. Is there any public comment on the firearms video or relatedly, I guess, the AI statement? I am seeing none. Thank you, Judge, for catching me on that. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We'll go with a roll call vote. Ms. Dragovich?
Yes.
Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Ms. Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Arun Kumar?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Judge Hill?
Yes.
Who's absent? Dr. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill?
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Ward?
Yes.
Great, motion passes.
Moving on to our next discussion and possible action, House Bill 4496.
Okay, for this one, I'm going to pull up an image, if you give me. Oh,
My bad. We're going to go back to 4, a discussion and possible action from the Drugs Subcommittee, a recommendation regarding sharing information related to drugs. Excuse me.
I'll take this one. Okay. So the drug subcommittee is interested in posting metrics, quarterly metrics on drugs that the laboratories have reported in order to share with interested stakeholders such as coroners, medical examiners, legislators, and so forth to get an idea of what is being seen in the state of Illinois.
so I will add from a procedural standpoint, this is the first time, probably not the last, that I think the ask of this subcommittee, due to the nature of what they're looking to post, is going to be asking that basically they have the power to post this information and update it as necessary on a pretty regular basis because this is more real time. So usually up to this point, anything that's gone on the commission's website comes through the commission. With this type of data, that's just not feasible. It doesn't serve the end users and it's just not realistic. I anticipate there will be times in the future that perhaps there may be other things moving forward that through the executive director's office and work with subcommittees, we may just decide we're gonna post or put out there without having to take it to a full vote. But this is the first time procedurally that has come up. And it is data. We think it'll be useful, not just to other stakeholders, just to see what's there and then kind of see where the data leads you. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say. And I just want to clarify again, this is going to be reporting of those compounds which the laboratories have identified and reported. So not necessarily those that we're seeing and that could be emerging in nature.
I'm sorry. Say that one more time. You said this will, sorry. This will be all the compounds that the laboratories are seeing, not just emerging compounds. Is that what you're saying?
It would be those that have been reported
All reports.
and identified, correct? Not those that are just indicated in data. We'll be tracking those separately.
Any questions or discussion?
Question. So for putting on the website, I think is great, but I'm wondering too, like, because we're a relatively new commission, that maybe the folks that would use this data aren't aware that it would be there. Are there plans to like the Illinois Board Association, like, hey, this is here?
That is a great question, actually. Yes, we are looking to compile a list of potentially interested parties so that we can at least notify them that this information is going to be posted online, and then it would be available for them moving forward.
Again, too, if we get the LinkedIn profile up soon too, that'll be a way to hopefully expand our reach, get more people, that will follow the page and then interested parties to see it that way as well. Okay, so this will also be a roll call vote. So this time I will not forget public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to offer comment on this topic before it goes to a vote? I'm seeing none. So
I'll make a motion then to post on the commission's website the reported drugs from the laboratories in the state and allow the drug subcommittee to make updates on a regular basis.
Jeff Buford, second.
Great. We'll do a roll call again. Ms. Dragovich?
Yes.
Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly is absent. Ms. Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Arun Kumar?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Judge Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Hughes is absent. Dr. Hughes?
Chris. Oh, yes.
That is your name. Ms. Ryhill? Ms. Ryhill?
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Ward?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, back to number 5, the very exciting House Bill 4496 procurement.
I'm going to pull this up on the screen, and then I believe Deputy Director Woolery is going to provide a little background on this bill.
Yes, so this bill was first proposed by, well, I guess I should. This bill was first proposed by the Department of Agriculture. It's a procurement bill that makes it possible for the state laboratories, agriculture, state police, EPA, I think just those 3, to be able to bypass procurement code if item or equipment, something that the state needs to procure, if it's not on contract, to make it easier and more efficient to be able to order. Anybody that works in state government understands the challenges of being able to procure an item in a timely manner. We have some examples that I have that I'll share with you, but this is the second time, I think, that this proposal has made its way. Last year, it didn't get any traction, so we're hoping that it gets traction this year. We've made a few changes and some tweaks to the proposal, legislative proposal, but and what we're looking for is to be able to, as a commission, hopefully to throw some support behind the proposal. It will allow the labs to be able to purchase items within a fiscal year, because literally sometimes you start at the beginning of a fiscal year and try to work your way through a fiscal year purchasing an item, and it gets to the end of the year and you still haven't been able to make that purchase. One of the examples we have with some of the procurement issues that we run into, most of the drug and toxicology sections for the state police utilize one type of instrumentation for their analysis. And for years, we've developed different methodologies on this instrument, on this type of instrumentation, purchased equipment and supplies for this type of equipment. And then after a few years with the state, you can't continue just to purchase. You have to go out to bid. And we lost the ability to purchase this piece of equipment from this company, and we had to change vendors, because even though we had all of the software and all the methodology and all of the equipment, and we knew how to support the equipment, we didn't have a choice, and we had to go with a different vendor. Well, the analysts just continued to use the old equipment. They wouldn't use the new equipment. Some labs, I know my lab, I forced my people to utilize, but there were a number of different drugs that they couldn't run on the instrument. It wasn't as sensitive. It took a lot of time to relearn. It was very inefficient. And while understandably, the state has procurement rules in place for a reason, sometimes they don't fit the purpose. And in this case, that's just one example of the time we spend a lot of times trying to work through a procurement process or code that isn't useful for the state. So the proposal, if you all have any questions, or I have a list of examples of things that we have done over the years, money that we have wasted, that the state has wasted, in my opinion, because we can't, get around this procurement code. So we're hoping that this legislation, ISP is hoping that the legislation passes. But if you all have any questions, we can definitely open it for discussion, or if anybody has any more questions on the proposal.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to add two thoughts. One, I feel like in the earliest days of the commission, we had some extensive discussions regarding procurement and the challenges it presented specifically regarding this field. And I think this bill helps to address some of those issues. And I appreciate your explanation, because I think it appreciates and acknowledges the reasons why there would be rules around procurement for state government, but also acknowledges the pitfalls and failures when you try to apply the same policy to every department, and the examples of where it leaves departments behind. And so I think a bill like this, it would make a lot of sense for the commission to support. I think it's unique. I think the way it's written seems to say there's still the effort, in place to try to do it in the way the procurement code is written. But when that fails, it exempts these particular departments to allow us to move forward. So I think it's something the commission should support. And when we get to that point, I'd be happy to make that motion.
Yeah, I agree. And you're absolutely right. It does not bypass items that are on contract. So you'd have to go through the contract procedure first. So it has that protection in place. But a lot of times at a fiscal level, people may not understand the challenges that a laboratory has in procuring an item. And we're not talking about buying pens. pen, okay, you're like, okay, well, you can certainly use any pen. And so often, in the laboratory, we're told, well, you can use any pipette tip. Well, no, and trying to explain the reason why takes so very long. And very often you're trying to explain it to someone that doesn't have that same scientific background, and maybe they don't understand that. And they're like, well, a tip is a tip. So you can purchase any tip. This is a tip, it fits onto your instrument, use that. Well, no, and this is the reason why. And then you run into an issue where you're trying to sole source an item and you're not able to do that. So this would just be a time saver for all the laboratories.
I think in my work a lot, we say it's not the intent, it's the impact. And so I think if the impact of applying the same procedure to everything results in an impact, that there's delays in the ability to do your job that affects the population that you're serving, that's a net negative, So I think trying to do something that addresses that in a positive way is really important. So I think this is an effort to move down that path.
Can I ask one question? It sounds like it might also be from a fiscal standpoint, because it seems like you run the risk of, as you said, possibly purchasing items, I'm not going to use the right words, but consumables or things like that, that perhaps then are stale or not usable by the time you actually get them. So it could also help reduce waste in addition to avoiding inefficiency.
We had one instance where we had to procure service contract for one of our DNA instruments. And there's only one company that makes, the instrument that we had only allows one company to work on, their company. Okay, so the item had to be serviced by that company, but we couldn't sole source that. And there were other companies that said they basically serviced the item. So we had to go out to bid. We went out to bid and another company won the bid. Well, all they did was basically then hire the company to be able to work. And then once they realized that the magnitude of what they had gotten into and that they were going to have to respond in a manner, they couldn't keep up with the work. I mean, it was literally like, now we couldn't go directly with the company. We had to hire a subcontractor basically to work, to get them to come. It was a waste of money and time. Literally halfway through the contract, but the company was asking to break the contract. They say, we don't want this contract anymore. Can we please get out of it? But we couldn't explain to fiscal why this, was untenable. And these are some of the procurements that we get into and issues. So.
Maybe add some commentary to for DNA at least, is the amount and validation work that's gone into with that instrumentation or chemistry and protocols and procedures that have been developed out of those. And so it's really important, and especially as we move forward with our accreditation requirements, there's been very specifics in terms of software versions. So yeah, just to get, I'll say, anything that could also serve a purpose, but the amount of work that's already gone into the investment and the procedures to, be able to put online and incorporate that into our workflow is tremendous as well.
I had a question. What was the reason this bill, like prior attempts, didn't get the traction it needed? Or is this the first time this is getting introduced?
No, this is actually, I think, the second year it got introduced, or maybe third. And it was introduced originally by by the Department of Agriculture. They were the ones that started it and then asked us if we wanted to join, in which case we were extremely happy to be a part. I don't really know the reason why it didn't make it through last year.
Can we look into it to see? I mean, this looks like it's important to pass, but, the reasons why the prior iterations didn't pass or didn't get the traction it needed, and we can help support it in some way. I don't know.
it's not the same bill number. Do we know the old bill number? I mean, I could look it up real quick right now.
I'll have to ask, John. I'll ask John Thompson.
Okay.
Can I sort of jump in here too, and I think that from a sort of an execution standpoint, I think Dr. Rukumar's suggestion is a good one in terms of figuring out what happened before. But I think we can all agree, based on everything that we've heard here today, that this bill sounds like a good idea. So I think that I really wouldn't want to delay our action on it. I think that the thing that the doctor was talking about might have to do with, okay, so how do we work on it once we get back down to Springfield to be successful? But I think we can all agree that from a logistics standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint, that this language makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I could assume, let's assume we vote to approve, or excuse me, to support this bill. Then obviously I, on your behalf, would be taking actions to communicate that support. I can certainly do that research as well, as Judge Hill pointed out, and just to inform my efforts, like, you know, so I really, sometimes bills just, as Ward will probably attest to, like, they're good bills, they just don't get the attention that session because there's other things that are a higher priority. I forget how many thousands of bills go through this per session. But as written, yes, I mean, I don't have an opinion on this, but as Judge Hill noted, the bill that's currently pending, as Deputy Director Woolery has described, it seems pretty simple, pretty clear cut. Is there any other comment before I open it up for public comment? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just so I can see everybody. Is there anyone that would like to offer public comment on the topic of House Bill 4496 before any motions are made? Okay, can you come to Mr. Rupel? So there might be someone. Let's just double check the chat real quick. Okay, Mr. Rupel.
I've seen, having been a vendor for 3 of the companies that you own, I've seen this type of purchase give a black eye to not just Illinois State Police, but other laboratories within the state of Illinois. I specifically have information from, I've been to the Department of Agriculture. That black eye says they don't know how to use anything other than one type of instrument. Okay, I've heard that from at least 10 or 12 different states around the union about Illinois. I don't want this commission to give that kind of a black eye to Illinois State Police. I have seen other instruments that Illinois State Police have refused to purchase because they had contracts with only one vendor. And that's what I disagree with, is sole sourcing.
Thank you. Mr. Agovich, do you have additional comment?
Yes, as a director of a laboratory that also purchases equipment, just to kind of summarize what I understand the issue to be with state purchasing. Jeannie Wright-Hill went into it. When we buy a piece of equipment, it is not plug and play. You do not get a widget, put it on a bench, and start using it on casework. You have to determine if the instrument that you believe will do the job that you bought it for can actually do that job by doing method development and then method validation. And then you have to train your staff, and then you have to competency test your staff, and then you have to roll out that equipment with a quality assurance program to ensure that that equipment is functioning as the way you expect it to. While I can certainly appreciate the frustration vendors may have with sole sourcing, most of what we do is very interconnected. So it's not I can buy an Apple computer and put Microsoft Office on there and it's going to work fine. It's that there are preferred consumables to be used with certain instruments because they have been validated and shown to work and shown to be reliable. And I think that the decision of which vendor is the best option for a laboratory to use ideally should be that laboratory. Fortunately, the labs that participate in the commission all have the opportunity to attend conferences at both the local, regional, and national level where they interact with vendors who sell all kinds of equipment. They also have the opportunity to talk to stakeholders from other labs across the country, where we do talk shop about different instruments, different capabilities, different technologies that we want to implement in our own laboratories to address work that our customers, clients ultimately want us to do, or work that we see is the future of the field of forensic science. So I wholeheartedly support the commission endorsing this House bill to be able to ease some of the hugely restrictive purchasing procurement limitations that our neighbors, the state police, have to deal with.
Any additional comments from commission members?
I would just say, as written, the bill doesn't, the draft of the bill language doesn't propose direct sole sourcing without going through the current process that exists. So I think it may provide a path to avoid the issue that you were suggesting might potentially present a problem.
One last comment is just that I think that we do a really good job of looking for a good product to be able to help our stakeholders, and that I don't feel that we make our judgment, based on whichever vendor. We want the best product. That's basically it, to help obviously there's a lot of different details that we have to look at. So it's not just one aspect, there's costs and timeliness and the quality. There's lots of different aspects without going into too many details or specifics about our section. But I feel like we try to give everybody a fair shot if we think it's the best products out there.
Any other comments? Okay, and then if there is someone, I believe Ms. Ward, you indicated that you would make a motion for that the commission support House Bill 4496.
You bet. So moved.
Second?
Jill Baker, I second.
I'm sorry, was there somebody else that?
No, there was not. It was a comment that I had put previously in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you for checking me though. No, please do. All right, we'll do a roll call vote on this. The motion is for the commission to support House Bill 4496. Ms. Dragovich?
Yes.
Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Ms. Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Arun Kumar?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Judge Hill?
Yes.
Who's absent? Dr. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill?
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
And Ms. Ward?
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Okay, moving on. Item number 6, discussion and possible action, Senate Bill 2998.
Again, going to share my screen. Okay, so a little background on this bill. This bill proposes changes to the commission's enabling statute. Specifically 2 changes, and I'll pull them up next. The first is to add subsection E5, which would basically add a new requirement on local and state publicly funded ISO 17025 accredited forensic laboratory systems to to report to the commission any complaint that they receive that alleges a significant nonconformity with the efficient delivery of forensic services and the sound practice of forensic science within 30 days, basically, of receiving that complaint. So that would be a new, basically reporting requirement to the commission. And then in addition to that, existing section F, which is already the reporting requirement for annual reporting requirement for significant nonconformities. It proposes making it clear that that's an annual reporting, and then it also provides that any of the complaints should also be included in the annual report. This bill was introduced by Senator Ellman. Prior to that being done, I will say she had reached out, her staffers had reached out to the commission and indicated the impetus for this bill is at least in part the situation with THC testing at AFTL. And it would essentially, obviously, it's possible already that significant nonconformities that are being reported are the result of complaints. However, it's not something, it's also possible that there are complaints that come in that would not check both boxes. So it does deal specifically with complaints about significant nonconformities. It would essentially, just that 30-day period would allow for more real-time, basically, review and monitoring by the commission. I think maybe Ms. Drakovich can speak to this. I think if this were to pass, the Quality Systems Subcommittee would fold it naturally into its work, obviously with the annual reporting, and then developing basically just a way to keep track as they come in. They could be submitted via the Commission's legacy email account. And one thing that could also result from this, should it pass, would be to provide additional data regarding complaints that are received by the laboratory systems. And that could be, that could inform things in the future. I will say from an infrastructure standpoint, I mean, you have me as your one staff member, but should this pass, I think it is doable from the commission standpoint for them, because we have that legacy email address. And just like the Quality Systems Subcommittee has developed developed a system for the annual reporting, I expect it would do the same for complaints.
Yeah, I think we could fold that in under the Quality Systems Subcommittee. And just to really highlight in this proposed language, it's an allegation, it's a complaint of an alleged significant nonconformity or deficient method, which means even if the lab has objective evidence that it is not a nonconformity, they still would need to report it to the commission because it is a complaint. So this reporting isn't based on the legitimacy of the complaint, just the fact that a complaint occurred. Which then, if you had a lab that didn't think that there was a problem with something, they would still have to report it. And there would be maybe outside evaluation we could do through the Quality Subcommittee.
I have a quick question. So the laboratories would report to the legacy email if any complaints came in. That would be the workflow, basically. The laboratory would receive the complaint and then send that email, that complaint, or a summary of that complaint to the legacy email. But what about the public? Would the public then also be allowed to, or they would send complaints directly to the commission if they had a complaint?
No, what's proposed in this statute is just requiring these lab systems to share complaints or report complaints with the commission. The commission does not currently have the ability or the authority to accept complaints. That being said, I mean, anyone can email anything to the commission. And the commission can work it, or the subcommittee could work through it. My thought would be, from thinking about it procedurally, that the legacy email address would be the right mechanism. But my guess is that, and this is just speculation, that the Quality Systems Subcommittee would probably come up with some type of like standard, maybe like form or email that the labs would fill out to share, just for consistency, not just in reporting, but then in tabulating the data at the end of the year. So that if there is something to be gleaned, for example, as Ms. Dragovich indicated, if complaints, allegations of nonconformities came in, it would count as a complaint. But if those were found to be unfounded, that would be, how many times a year is that happening? things like that. How many times a year is that leading to corrective action or a QIR or whatever each lab calls it? Or was that something that the labs were already aware of? So the information like that could be useful in general to the lab systems, but then also to expand on that annual report.
I think a form would be necessary because you're right, in order to have some type of consistency, 3 different or 4 different lab systems reporting something, you want to make sure you have the same information received. So yeah, I think
We would definitely make sure, we have representatives from each lab on the quality subcommittee, and we definitely make sure everyone has the ability to give input on how that would be formatted.
So I have just a couple questions, and maybe they might be in the nature of concerns. Like, what constitutes a complaint? From where do they come? Could it be an attorney, the criminal justice system, who didn't like the results from the lab? It sounds like even if the complaint doesn't have a basis, in fact, still got to be reported by the lab. And with that in mind as a possibility, then I'm worried about sort of an unfunded mandate type of concern here. I don't know what the volume is going to be. But certainly, this is designed to catch more than what's been going on going forward. And I don't see in this legislation any way sort of any funding to cover any additional workload. I don't know if there's going to be more workload, but there doesn't appear to be any funding to sort of cushion or help to support what more might be coming down the pike on this. So those are just a couple of concerns. Not to say that it's all bad, and certainly more information is better, but I guess I just want to be sure that we keep in the back of our mind that if it's an unfunded mandate, if the world of complaints can come from anywhere, and the lab's got to account for it and then report it to us, do we have the support financially to handle any additional workflow? So those are just some things that I was thinking about as I looked at this, and I just don't want us to sort of go forward without thinking about that.
Those are good questions. The labs, as 17025 accredited labs, are already required to have a mechanism on how to handle complaints. And a complaint could come in from anyone. It could be a member of the general public, it could be an attorney, it could be a law enforcement agency. And we have to deal with those complaints. That is, we have to have a process, and we have to deal with complaints per our accreditation. So if we were to develop a form, that would be an extra lift. If we were to require emailing of the information, that is an extra lift. And that's definitely something, if this were to become law, that we could figure out with the quality subcommittee, what would be the least impact on the laboratory to be able to conform with this, right?
Yes.
So I like the idea of a Form 2 and having standardization of reporting. Maybe we meet and it's like, whoa, that's going to be a huge lift. We would rather just send you in our complaint form or whatever email we got from someone complaining. The law is not prescriptive in how that information is communicated, only that it is communicated. So I think we have leeway there. But I do think your questions are on point, like how big of a lift will this be? I have no idea how many complaints the other labs get. It is restricting it to a significant nonconformity or deficient method. So not every complaint may fall into that bucket. So would there be additional work? Yes. How much? Unknown.
Judge Hill, to your comment about unfunded mandate or resources, I think I agree, a very valid concern. Again, we don't know yet right now, as I am your only staff member. I think working with the Quality Systems Subcommittee, not knowing the amount that's coming in, like I initially think that this would be doable, but this is, I will say, so this is the first proposed expansion of the commission's scope, so to speak. Since you've added additional members, you've changed a few words here and there when it comes to, some technicalities that in practice you realized, we need to change that language. But this is the first proposed expansion. I do think just I'll tell you from my workflow perspective, like again, unless it's going to be a huge mountain, which we'll find that out, I do think it would be doable. But if and when, as the commission continues to evolve and get more established, if there comes a time where we need to think about additional staff members, then that's something we could certainly discuss. I know it's something that was contemplated early on in the task force, and I think at the beginning of the commission, was that there might be additional staff needed.
I'd like to add on, if I can. I do agree with Judge Hill's reason to bring about the questions. I recognize this is an initial proposal, but as I was reviewing it, there's a couple of lanes, including what our judge had brought forth. One is the ambiguity of certain terminologies. I felt that what's being proposed, certain terminologies such as deficient method, and the other section that says all complaints received alleging significant nonconformity with efficient delivery of forensic services. I don't feel these terms are defined enough, and the basis of identifying a legitimate complaint that comes to the laboratory is specified. I don't think it's specified. Secondly, establishing whether the complaint of the alleged nonconformity is legitimate and the source that it's coming from. I did not think that the timeline that was proposed as far as a 30-day disclosure, whether or not would have sufficient time, as the laboratories may need additional time for get full disclosure of information related to the nature of the complaint, whether or not it was legitimate. And I don't think a 30-day window in investigative steps that may be required is sufficient. And those are the things which I was observing. The ambiguous language here does put the laboratory in a position to define whether the deficient method or the other statement may. I think that may be an undue burden on the laboratory for them to define what these are.
I can just speak to the language regarding significant nonconformity with the efficient delivery of forensic science and the deficient method. That language is the same as what is already in F. So it tracks the same language that is already in F for the annual reporting. So I think that could probably be addressed within the Quality Systems Subcommittee. Obviously, the timing could not be. That would be something that would need to be changed in the statute.
Noted.
I had a quick question. So are labs making this information publicly available currently? And would this just be a collection, or is this is this the first time?
My complaints don't go anywhere public at this point in time. So we would have to have discussions at the Quality Subcommittee about, as we have previously on the nonconformity, we don't use people's names in the significant nonconformity report. So we would need to have discussions. If we are appending these as part of the annual report, are we including the name of the complainer? Are we including the name of the person who, if it's about a person versus a lab or a process, are we including that person's name? But historically, as you've seen with our reports that have gone out on significant nonconformities, we have not named staff members. But those are all things we would probably need to discuss if we were have to do this.
Yeah, thank you. That was one line of concern. And then also just the fact that these are the alleged, right? They haven't been verified as issues yet. So I think it's really important on the commissions. I understand what's coming into the commission. That makes sense. But then what the commission reports out, I think we need to be extremely thoughtful about, because, and really making it clear to public you know, that these are allegations. And then I think having a space for the resolutions is really important. And I'm also thinking about like annual reporting. If, you know, you're getting information and then they report the alleged complaint, but then it's a year until we report again that one might have been, you know, debunked or whatever, right? But they won't know because they're in the middle of the investigation. So we also have to think about timing of these complaints and how we report.
There's also the aspect of we're not a regulatory commission. So what does that mean when we just post a complaint and that we've discussed it? And then some of us here probably have participated in understanding the complaint and addressing it within our laboratory, within the documents, right? And I think those documents are discoverable. It's not that they are completely shielded at times. So I guess I'm just definitely, I'm not opposed to necessarily being transparent. It's just, what does this mean? And what does that then, can it be potentially misleading to the public of how it was dealt with or not dealt or believed dealt with in those documents?
When labs handle their complaints and they handle them, adjudicate them fairly, there really isn't a problem. The problem is when you have a lab that doesn't adjudicate complaints, right? Which is where the genesis of this language, as we understand it. So I see the potential for be able to say, you know, this was a allegation. Oh, look, the lab did a corrective action on that issue. So now we can show to the public they received a complaint, they reviewed the information necessary, they saw there was a problem, they took care of it, and we can tie that up nicely in a report to say labs are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Not only can the accrediting body see that, but you can now see that through a public-facing side. So that would be the pro of having a system like this, but there would be a lot of things to work out if we were to do it.
Claire, I think you may have just addressed my question, what you just said, but I was sort of backwards looking at, can you help me understand again sort of the impetus of why we're considering this now? Like of why the legislators making this proposal that the commission do this at all? Because if I'm understanding, the labs already have a complaint process that they're already required to follow. And so they're doing that. And so this is being brought forward, not at the request of the commission to have a change to what the current statute says. It's being brought by someone else. Can you give me the reminder again about why that is, and if then the commission is being asked to throw support behind this, or or to give feedback on the bill, or will you remind me of that part?
So you're right, this was not proposed by the commission. This was, I believe, the idea of the senator who introduced it, who reached out to both ISP and the commission based on concerns. And again, as we all know, we don't know everything about the situation with THC testing at AFTL. That obviously some things went wrong at that lab. That perhaps one of those related to complaints and how they were handled. And it was reactionary to that. So essentially we had some issues at a lab that is now closed, and looking to see if the commission, again, the root cause analysis is not done yet, but looking to see if there's a way that the commission could possibly expand to possibly address one aspect of what on there. I will say to Ms. Ryhill's comments, I think, so the plain language of what is proposed does not require like the posting of the complaints when they're shared with the commission. So the labs they just have to report them to the commission within the prescribed time frame. Sharing, at least here as written, would come in the annual report. So it would be another data point, another amount of information that then would be, the annual report would be expanded to encompass the complaints as well. Again, this is, this is just up for discussion, whether you take action or not, or you table it. I will say one thing of value that I could see coming from this is as questions arise about, should the scope of the commission possibly be expanded to this point, possibly in the future, even beyond it, having data about complaints, seeing how many complaints come in a year, seeing how many of them result in some type of corrective action, see how many of them were already identified by the lab, might be useful data. Because if one of the well, I mean, every commission is different, but many of the regulatory agencies, they are primarily focused on accepting and reviewing complaints. So it might not be a bad thing to have data on complaints.
That's really helpful. I mean, for me, I'm thinking it's somewhere between sunshine is always a good thing on understanding how things work. And also overcorrection is not always a good thing. And so trying to figure out if the commission were to write a policy that said, how do we have sunshine so we understand how things are working, and we're reporting that out to the public, and how do we not overcorrect for a thing that happened that shouldn't have happened? What's the line in that, and is that this? And if that's not this, what might that look, what might that look like? Because if this is an opportunity for input, and if we think, and I certainly do not have those thoughts, so I'm not offering a good suggestion on what this language would say, but you all brilliant people, especially that lead the labs, might know that, like, what is it that would be helpful to know that the commission could know and could report out to the public, so that we were sharing information that was helpful, and bringing information forward that demonstrated that we agree labs are managing complaints internally, and that the commission is aware of complaints that have happened, and we can verify and validate that if that's what we want to make sure the public is aware of, and that we are not overcorrecting to the point we're asking people to do things that almost imply we think there were more things being done wrong when that's not actually what we think at all. And so that's something that I think is important for us to think about in terms of language, because sometimes people write language based on an individual circumstance that doesn't reflect the depth of what's happening in most circumstances. So that's when I'm sort of looking at this and thinking, does this say what we would say if we were trying to take it forward and make it more broad? And if it doesn't, is there different language we might use, or was this a good starting point and we would tweak it, perhaps in some ways, and that's something we could do? Because I agree with what you were saying, that maybe there are a lot of valid things here that are like, we don't object to this being brought forward, but maybe we do object to, does it create a volume of work that may not be necessary to accomplish the end we're trying to achieve? Is there perhaps another path that could be taken? Because if the commission is being asked to either support it, do we support something that doesn't demonstrate the end that we would want, or do we say we don't object to it, in which case we're neutral, on it, and we're agreeing that we will comply with it should it become law, or are we in a position to give feedback on it and say, we don't object to the concept, but we think it could be better if it did this, this, and this?
I completely agree with what you're saying. And personally, my knee-jerk reaction as a past laboratory director is always, okay, what are you asking us to now disclose? But I think realistically, that's a good idea. It is something that we already have a workflow, like Claire said, through our accreditation. I do think the 30-day time period is a little tight. I would feel more comfortable with maybe a 45 or 60-day. That's just thinking from a laboratory system standpoint with as many labs as ISP has. But I don't think that we get away from, and there's no real good reason not to utilize this, and for us not to, support this type of legislation. We should be open. We should be able to let the public know if we receive complaints. If we're a public laboratory, this is information that they have a right to. The concern or the uncomfortable feeling is because we're not a regulatory commission. That's the point. But this might be the best way to go forward if we don't want to become a regulatory commission. This might be that line, you have to give something. I would personally wouldn't like to see us become a regulatory commission. That's my personal feeling, but I think you might need to give something in order to not go down that path.
To your point, Ms. Ward, about overcorrection. I think that is a very insightful point. I've certainly seen it in inquiries and conversations and interviews I've had since the AFTL situation, became known, is that sometimes in the public, there is a knee-jerk reaction to if something went wrong at a lab, which of course is terrible, that a regulatory commission or overcorrection could fix it, as opposed to, well, let's see what actually went wrong and then narrowly tailor, or not necessarily narrowly, but tailor adjustments or expansions to address those issues. So that is something that personally, I would be concerned about. And I do think that, again, this just from the way it's written, it's narrowly tailored. It's not inconsistent with the scope. It really is just expanding the review you already have the ability to do with nonconformities to also to add complaints with just adding that more real-time kind of additional reporting requirement. And again, may provide useful data that informs discussions later on if and when the commission ever talks about, do you want to evolve into quasi-regulatory, regulatory oversight, whatever. That might be useful data.
Can you remind us if this laboratory in question, were they ISO accredited?
They were.
I had a point. It does say, yes, complaints should go to the commission and their corrective action, gets reported to the commission as well. But towards the end, it does say, on page 7, and an analysis of the effectiveness of the corrective actions taken. So it is asking the commission to analyze, to see if the corrective action taken is.
So that's already in the statute?
Yeah, it's not underlined, so it's already.
Yes, it is. You're right. So yes, they already do that in the annual report.
And to add to Judge Hill's point, sometimes when you want to analyze the effectiveness, we may not be subject matter experts, right, of all these issues that a lab may or may have. So I don't, maybe looking into language that, that the commission can ask other individuals for it. We're just members, subject matter experts. Not all of them are going to willingly volunteer and talk to the commission, but especially if you want to say, if we have to say, the corrective action taken was, effective.
So currently, with the quality subcommittee meetings, when we review the reports of significant nonconformity, a representative, at least one representative of each lab, goes through the report that they provided to us and answers questions. I know the 2 years ago, we had just one from your laboratory. I called someone at your lab and I spoke to them for them to explain to me what the issue was, because it's a piece of equipment I don't use. And their explanation, they did a great job explaining to me briefly what it was and what the issue was and how they remediated that situation. If there was something, we always have the ability to phone a friend if we don't understand what someone's telling us at a meeting. So in that regards, the language describing what the commission has to do is not prescriptive. It doesn't say I can't phone a friend. It doesn't say we can't have a discussion. And so we are doing those things already and evaluating the agency to tell us, we did X, Y, and Z, and that has addressed our issue. And we feel like that was a good solution. And if someone at the meeting is like, oh, I'm not sure about that, that's their opportunity to say, well, hey, can you tell me more about this? And we fortunately have that representative from that lab to be able to answer any other questions they might have. So we are doing those things during our meetings and in preparation of that report.
Peter St. Andre here. Can I chime in? So
I guess submitting these nonconformity complaints is just kind of a continuation of our accreditation standards. Now, if we are going through and investigating this alleged nonconformity, and as a lab we feel that it's unfounded, is there going to be, I guess, a way for the commission to agree with that stance to kind of, because if it goes into our corrective action process, that'll be in the annual reporting. They'll have, um, you know, kind of measures for its effectiveness already built into that workflow. But, when we're reviewing these and we may find them to be unfounded, is there going to be an avenue for agreement on that, or whether the commission says, the quality subcommittee says, no, that's not valid, the stance that it is unfounded? Does that make sense?
Yeah, if I'm understanding you, Peter, you're saying, what if you receive a complaint of an alleged issue, your lab finds it unfounded, you report it to the commission, you want to know if we're going to discuss the allegation complaint and state on the record if we agree with your conclusion or not?
Yes, I guess like this kind of deals with only alleged nonconformities that have corrective actions tied to them. Now, I guess there would still be the investigation that you find it unfounded, but is there still going to be comment on kind of that avenue of alleged nonconformities?
So how I'm reading the statute suggestion is that somebody makes a complaint and they allege that the lab or an employee has done something wrong. You receive that complaint and you're like, they didn't read the report right, or they didn't understand what the person said. That's not a founded complaint. I'm going to let them know, hey, I got your complaint. I reviewed your complaint. I don't agree with your complaint, and this is why. If you read the complaint and you're like, whoa, they're right, we have an issue, that would then turn into an evaluation of non-conforming work, right? That they then could lead to a corrective action process. So it almost sounded like you were saying that the lab would have to do a corrective action evaluation if they received a complaint.
Well, I guess so. It says to forward any alleged significant nonconformity, and then shall include the nature and extent of whether any corrective actions have been implemented or will be implemented. Now, we'd be forwarding the alleged significant nonconformity, but then for our investigation, we're saying that it may not need a corrective action because it's unfounded. However, it's going to be entered in, as an alleged nonconformity, to the commission. Is there going to be, I guess, is there a way to kind of differentiate between the two?
Yes, I think Chris had brought up like teasing out like how many allegations of how many complaints of alleged non-conforming work versus how many complaints that actually truly were non-conforming work, and being able to look to be able to show, lab received X number of complaints, only Y number were found to actually be an issue, and we would have received the corrective action reports on those through the other requirement of the reporting, or be told we have a corrective action that's still in progress that has not been completed this calendar year, but we're working on it and it should be finished next calendar year, right? Depending on when that identification of non-conforming work occurred. Does that answer your question?
I think he was saying.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So like for the example of why this was all created was, which is going to be another discussion point later on, that lab says it's unfounded, basically, and now the commission subcommittee is stepping in and saying, well, not so fast. So is there, a way to confirm unfounded nonconformities, or are we just going off? Are we just saying what the labs are self-reporting?
I would think the lab self-reports, and if the members of the subcommittee have questions, just like when we address the annual significant nonconformities, the members of that group can ask questions of the lab if they need clarification. But if you were to submit, excuse me, a complaint that somebody alleged that one of your testing reports did not give a result for a specific exhibit, and you say, we pulled up the report and we tested all the exhibits, they just couldn't read the report, there's nothing really to ask you, right? You've evaluated that. We can understand what the nature of the complaint was and how you figured out whether it was a true complaint or not. But if the information you give us is not sufficient to understand the nature of the complaint or your conclusion regarding the nature of the complaint, then we would have the opportunity to ask questions for clarification.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
I'm sort of fascinated with the level of discussion at this point, or this point in the agenda has generated. And it brings me to the point where I don't know if we're ready to say absolutely yes for this bit of legislation, at least right now. I know that previously there was a bit of legislation that we were asked to opine on, and the point was made that as things go in Springfield, what we see right now may not be the end result that might be voted on or dealt with in a committee meeting in Springfield. So I'm wondering if, for whatever we do, that we sort of assume that there's a possibility that what we're looking at right now is not going to be the finished product. I love the concept of sunshine, by the way. They're really good sort of word to use for what we think is good and just. But I just wonder if our path or what we do today, I'm not sure if we're able to say what we're looking at right now in terms of this proposed legislation, we're supporting completely. I think there's lots of questions, and maybe there may be concepts that we like, including sunshine, but maybe we're not in a position to say we're ready to sort of endorse the language as it is right now. I mean, I think that I feel like I think we like the concept. And I'm going to underline the word sunshine. But everything from all the questions that have come about here today, everything from the timing, the 30-day window, if the lab opposes what the complaint was and say, no, we're good. I just wonder if we are in a position to completely endorse the language as it's written right now. Just throw that out there.
I think those are all reasonable questions, and it doesn't sound like there is a strong consistency of opinion on how this is written right now. I just reflect upon, I don't typically get to write legislation. And so, but I do have to deal with legislation. So do I think I could deal with this legislation? I think I could, the way it's written. I don't know how much opportunity or ability we would have to amend the number of days or to amend anything else. So I don't know if we want to do that, which I think is a reasonable request to make. I have no idea if our request would be honored by the legislator who introduced this. But we could definitely, if we wanted to make a motion to say, overarchingly, we support the intent. However, we do have a concern about the timeliness. And is there anything else specifically we would want to address? We could certainly, as a group, put that information, push that back out to the legislator and ask them to consider, given that we would be the people having to implement this language.
So I would say, obviously, whatever you decide to do today, that'll be me communicating that. It's sounding like what you're saying is kind of more of a neutral on the current language, or possibly supporting, but for the timing requirement. So I mean, I guess I'd need a little bit of, as we've talked about with other legislation, when you support or oppose a bill or take a position on a bill at any point in time, you're taking a position on that as it's written at the time. So if you were to take a position, whatever that is today, and it's amended, you haven't taken a position on the amendment. So, you know, this is active this session. You know, this may be the situation where for the first time we have to call a special meeting prior to June because the session will end before June, your next meeting. I guess, yeah, how you would like me to proceed, what you think the best way to frame that is. I mean, it looks like for sure the one identified change it's sounding like is the turnover time in the proposed section E5. So do you want to identify a different time frame that I can communicate back to the legislator?
Yes, I would say that we propose 60 days.
Okay.
So I think, Claire, what you said is really helpful in terms of what it is you feel like you could live with and work with. It's also true about writing legislation. I think the best thing we can do is offer what the feedback is, ask for what you want, because I think sometimes with legislators, they've written it based on what their understanding is of what would be the next best thing to do. And if, as the commission, we think there's something that's better, the next thing we can do is ask for it. And so I think if we think 60 days is better than 30, let's ask for 60, because it certainly could be that the legislator isn't tied to 30, that they just think that was what made sense at the time. If we have a legitimate reason for why 60 is better, then we ask for 60. And if there's room for compromise on that, that they feel like 60 is a reach, but 45 might be, you know, tolerable, then maybe we can work with that. And maybe if truly we felt like 30 wasn't terrible, you know, that it might be something that we could live with, then we should know that as well, you know, as well, that may be better than going back to the drawing board altogether. You know, so I feel like if our goal was to say, we think the legislation could be improved, the intent is good, you know, we think the intent is good and the layout, you know, understand that makes some sense, but that the timeline could be improved. We want to avoid, I feel like one of the things I heard in this conversation was we want to avoid the impression that the commission is a regulatory body. And that that could be, you know, implied in some ways by what's being asked here. And so if there was language that affirmed that the commission is not a regulatory body, or that we were just clear in the understanding of the language as written, that it wasn't with the intent of the commission being a regulatory body, that's just feedback we could convey to the senator in this that doesn't request a language change, you know, there, and that we were affirming that the intent of the bill was to provide clarity, provide that opportunity to make sure that complaints were being brought forward in some type of public way. You know, that to me was part of the sort of collective feedback from this group. If we could share that feedback, and that we think that this bill is certainly a solid effort toward that direction, and with these adjustments, we could certainly support it, and that minus those adjustments, minimally we'd be neutral on the bill, that there was no discussion we had about opposing the bill. That's what I took of this conversation, but certainly glad to stand corrected if I misunderstood anybody's feedback.
I just had one comment in talking about the non-regulatory. So where it says that the analysis of the effectiveness of the correction actions taken is reported by the commission, can we say something in there that the commission may make a recommendation?
That is already in, so subsection under your duties and purpose. So subsection B4 of the commission says review significant nonconformities with the sound practice of forensic science documented by each publicly funded ISO 17025 accredited forensic laboratory and offer recommendations for the correction thereof. So that is under your duties and purposes. It ties back to the existing subsection F, which lays out the annual reporting. So getting cart before the horse, but getting to your last agenda item, that certainly would qualify under that. And then the annual reports were appropriate. The subcommittee, and then the commission has adopted them, has made recommendations or observations about nonconformities in the past.
Right, that's right. But in section F, could it be repeated somehow that it's a recommendation there? If we found, if our analysis of the corrective action was not effective, could we say something that a recommendation was made and repeat that it's recommendation and not regulatory?
So you're talking in section F? So maybe making.
Katie Drummond, can I make a comment? I am reading subsection F differently. I believe the analysis component is directed at the laboratories who are filing the reports and not the commission's obligation.
Yes.
So I don't know if this is specific to any recommendations coming from the commission. I just think it's the way I'm reading it, and I agree with everything everybody has said, and everybody's pointed out concerns that I've had, so I don't feel the need to go over them, but it looks as though the mechanism of this is for us to collect data. I don't know if the data is meant to be public. E5 and subsection F don't say that the information that we collect is meant to be public. I'm assuming so. I'm not really sure. That's not clear. And I don't know what the ultimate purpose is in us collecting the information if we're not a regulatory body. I don't know what the exact purpose is of this being implemented with the language that's been provided.
So, Kayla, I agree with you. You are correct. Subsection F outlines the reporting requirements, not what the commission does with it. That goes back to subsection B4, which then says that the commission reviews significant nonconformities documented by the labs and there's recommendation for the correction thereof. So B4 is what directs the commission what to do. F is what directs what the labs need to report. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, since I wasn't with the commission at the beginning, but you're correct. There's nothing in the statute that requires public sharing of any information. But in the early days of the commission, I believe it was decided that in executing its duties under the statute, that the commission would compile an annual report of the nonconformities and that they would make that a public-facing document. And so that is why the annual report, so that's something the commission did, even though it's not technically required to do by the language of the statute.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Is it fair to say the annual report, the difference between what's being proposed now is that the 30 or how many day window is to provide a timely or kind of a real-time action? Is that, or more of a closer to the events?
It doesn't compel the language. The proposed language in E5 doesn't address any action. So it doesn't action on part of the commission. It's action on part of the labs. So it's additional action on part of the labs. It's it's something more than annual, and two, that it's related to complaints.
And does the person putting forward this change know that this may not be a public document?
I'm not sure.
Because I don't know why they're putting this forward. I have an understanding of the background, but if their idea is the commission gets these complaints and they think that they're going to get a report of these complaints where we're not, we don't have to put this out as a public document, then does that serve the purpose of whoever is proposing this change?
I don't know. as explained to me at least, the intent at least of the addition of E5 was to add complaints to the information that is shared with the commission and to do it more in real time than if it was just, like, for example, let's say E5 wasn't added and that F was just amended to add complaints in addition to significant nonconformities. That would just be an annual thing versus something a little bit more in real time.
I can just offer an alternative viewpoint on it, to use the analogy again of sunshine. I think this is just a way in order for the commission to kind of see a laboratory's decision-making process and to help to perhaps, if needed, improve that decision-making process by seeing what kind of complaints are coming in and how the laboratory is evaluating that. So by enhancing the time frame, instead of waiting for a review of a corrective action after a certain amount of time, the commission is then just seeing the decision-making process as it's happening and reviewing it at that time. And again, like, there's no action per se occurring with the annual report other than to potentially give a recommendation. But this, if we are quote unquote stuck with this legislation, the sunshine would be, we just have an insight into the decision-making process of the laboratories.
Day section aside, adding complaints to F would give the commission the ability, and the labs, as Ms. Dragovich has noted, all the lab systems are currently represented on the commission, give the ability to share the information about complaints the same way they do right now about significant nonconformities. And at least in my 2 years, being present for those meetings, that has appeared to be valuable. Not only report, but in that sharing that takes place as the annual report is being prepared. To notice, trends, maybe I'm gonna give a bad example, but, we had an issue with a proficiency test too. Maybe it was the same one. Things like that normally would not get communicated outside of a particular lab system. So there could be trends we kind of don't know what we don't know when it comes to complaints, right? So, if there are trends as far as, again, this would be, if this were to pass, it would be something for the subcommittee to develop, like, would complainants be identified by like category, member of the public, attorney, defendant, is there a trend? Is there, the type of complaint? Again, we don't know what we don't know about complaints.
Our annual report is always, it's always developing. It's always changing. When commission was first started, and basically our mandate was just, you have to submit an annual report. It didn't say what that report was supposed to look like, how the nonconformities were supposed to be written or compiled. It was just, okay, here's your mandate, go forth, do something with it. And our first report is drastically different from what we report today. I think as, if this legislation passes and we have to start including complaints, it won't be the only change that we make as the commission grows. 10 years from now, the report is going to look drastically different. We'll figure out the best way to add in if we have to do this, to add in the complaints, to categorize them, kind of like we've done with our nonconformities. So it will grow and change, and we'll work through that as the commission grows. And this is just going to be one example of how we change through the years. We will end up making a lot of small changes and corrections as we grow. And I think it's just a growing process.
I have a quick question. So it sounds like there's two kinds of complaints, right? There's alleged complaints that then result in a corrective action that those are ones that are already going to be reviewed. And those are within the scope in B4, right, of what we're supposed to be doing. The complaints with allegations that are then then determined to be unfounded. I don't understand what within the scope of how this is currently written that the Forensic Science Commission would do anything with them, right? Because B4 is review significant nonconformities, right? So the language that's been added here is about what we're asking the labs to report to the commission, but I don't see where within how our tasks are currently written that we have any responsibility to do anything with them. So I think we need to be a little bit more clear about if we're asking labs to do extra work, what are we doing as a commission with? I do agree that things could emerge, but I think we need to think through what that means, because it's right now, it doesn't look like it's something that we are tasked to review.
I agree with you as far as the language is written. It's not an additional task other than to receive them. But again, just throwing this out there, if we don't know what we have,
So in our duties and purpose for the commission, we are to provide guidance to ensure the efficient delivery of forensic services and the sound practice of forensic science. So I think it would fall under that, right? Like if I turn up at a meeting, I'm like, hey, I got this complaint and they said this, and I'm like, shh, no worries. And the two people with me are like, oh, no, you got a problem. Like, that's huge, right? I want to get that feedback. And I don't have a mechanism for that feedback right now. So I guess I'm trying to look at the positive of the proposed legislation and how it would provide transparency and potentially like gap analysis. If, you're in your own little silo and you think your own little things and you think you're right, it could be really valuable to have another person's perspective on my decision-making process. But that's,
it does remind me of what we've created with this drug subcommittee, where it's kind of encouraging the labs to discuss it. But I also wonder then, we've been pretty clear about that kind of being something. I mean, it's in our Forensic Science Commission, but isn't it like a separate?
the subcommittees within the commission, the emerging drugs working group, is outside of the commission.
Yeah.
That's where the labs are talking to each other in real time about if they're seeing, again, I'm using the wrong language, correct me if I'm wrong, if they're seeing or emerging compounds that they have to decide whether they are controlled under the classification statutes, right? So I'll throw out there from kind of to build on what Claire just said. If the lab directors and the people that would be doing this are comfortable with it, and we don't know what we don't know about complaints yet, just from a procedural standpoint, I would throw out there that, but this gives you space to make it what you want to make it within your scope. And as Claire pointed out, there are other provisions in your scope that will allow you to do different things. You're not limited in what you do with respect to nonconformities now, nor would you be limited with complaints as long as it falls under something in your scope. Is it preferable to have the commission, which has representation from all the labs, has subject matter experts, and has the ability to bring in other subject matter experts in a forum to discuss, to have you driving that versus more prescriptive or legislation? Just throwing that out there. Like, is this a good starting point? That doesn't mean this is the end all be all, and it certainly doesn't mean that this is going to be the last statute that's introduced, addressing your scope or other things. But it seems to me, I mean, obviously there's never alignment between lawyers and scientists and words and legislation. But it seems like it makes sense, at least conceptually, and then you could work through it. And then if there's something that you need to change, as you work through it, as you did with the significant nonconformities, you addressed early on, you identified kind of a gap there and proposed a statutory change to kind of clarify that subsection F, then you could do that. But like, if this is something reasonable that you think you could work within versus being told possibly, should this be amended in a different way or should other things be introduced? You never know what could happen, right?
one more point about how many days we pick. Is there, with the accrediting bodies, is there a certain amount of time that you have a minimum number of days to meet a complaint, resolve a complaint, what that is? Because it seems like that should be factored into. Certainly don't want it to be shorter than that time that we're asking for information.
I don't remember if there's a specified number of days, but I'm good with 60.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Sorry, didn't take that to mean that there had to be resolved. It just needed to be brought forward, but obviously I think you want to be clear in what you are bringing forward as opposed to some random talking points.
Right, and when it's whatever time frame it's under, I think the language just requires that the labs report it to the commission. I mean, obviously, if it has been resolved, if you create a form, you could share that information. If it's in progress, you could, I mean, again, you guys can figure out how to align that with your existing quality systems. I think, and just as you did with the annual nonconformity report.
I think perhaps the benefit of the longer time is basically as written is that the report under the subsection would include the nature and extent of the nonconformity or deficient method and whether any corrective actions have been or will be implemented. The possibility that if there was any corrective action that had happened, the idea of that being more if you had 60 days so that when you're reporting that there was a complaint, that you're reporting whatever follow-up has occurred seems more likely to be more complete if you have a little bit longer, period of time to do that. I think that's where asking for the 60 seems reasonable, but also noting that the 30 is doable, even if there are no next steps, if the next steps have been limited. I think that the possibility for completion is better with 60, but 30 may mean we've received the complaint. These are the actions that will be taken, but they may not have all been taken at that point. And I think, regarding legislation and maybe just a slightly different perspective I would have is, I wouldn't want us to take the viewpoint that legislation is something to be lived with, but that is something that you have the opportunity to participate in developing, and that we have that opportunity to influence it in a way that is helpful to you to make it something that isn't what you have to, tolerate or try to find a way to deal with, and that is something that can be useful or helpful, to you, then better to have it that way from the beginning than later. And I also take the point that many of you have made that I think is really helpful, that if this is framework enough, that you have space to create, a response within your individual labs and the complaint process that you manage, that you have that space with this and that you can manage that. I take that point as well. I think that's really helpful to hear. Oh, thank you.
Another comment to maybe getting a little bit more time on it would also allow us to determine the significance. So really, is it something that's kind of benign, and then all of a sudden, as you go to look into it and understand if there is an extent a little further out, you may reclassify it as, so 60 days would allow that determination, and really is more investigation of something that you think was very minor and evolved.
Can I ask just one maybe wrap-up question, and that is, like, from the lab director standpoint, Claire and Robin, former lab director, Peter, who's on the call. Listening to all this, are you okay with the legislation? Is that too much of being on the spot there a little bit?
No, not at all. I'm okay with it. I think that it is certainly something that's palatable. Now, am I jumping for joy for it? No, not necessarily, but I am okay with it. I think that it is certainly something that is doable and probably something we should do.
Yeah, I agree. This is Peter St. Andre talking. I agree. This is something I can work with. I'm all for adding more transparency, getting extra eyes on some of this stuff, so we're not in silos. If this is a way to get get complaints into the quality system. Perfect.
Yeah, I look at it from a fundamental standpoint, the evolution of this, if we really look at it as a knee-jerk reaction, if this is where they landed, I'm okay with the transparency. I did not like the 30-day window. That's why I thought a longer period of time to coincide with Jeannie had recommended as far as mentioning it gives us time to establish the significance and the impact. A 60-day window, I think, is a lot more palatable. I can live with that. And I do like the defining in section F of defining annual reporting. I'm fine with those areas, but the areas I disagree with, especially was a 30-day window. I thought that was insufficient.
Hani, you're one of our reporting labs.
I, I think it's okay. It's just, you know, how we report it out in the end. The annual reporting is something that kind of, you know, it's like, what are we going to put in that report? All the details, or is it going to be like a general outline of what the complaint was? That's a concern. And, you know, it's not something we cannot do. It's just how we put it out. We do want labs to be able to get complaints and work on them, right? And is it, you know, it's just they may feel, again, it's dependent on the lab to report that complaint. And we want the complaints to, you know, to be acted on. That part is just a little bit of a concern. And so in the reporting, if we make sure we put it out as a general outline of the complaint and not like all the little details of who complained, you know, what exactly the complaint of this real details of the complaint and things like that, I feel labs will more readily report them, right? And more readily work on them. We don't want to be too restrictive that, you know, complaints are not reported.
Right. No, I agree. And that what you're suggesting or proposing is pretty much in alignment with how we report right now. There's annual significant nonconformities. So I think that just like with the original language in the statute, we worked together as a team to figure out how we would collate the reports from the labs and put them in a consistent formatting for reporting and address the questions that are being asked in the legislative requirements. And we would do the same with this. And I think that it promotes transparency of the labs and their operations and supports in demonstrating how labs in Illinois handle complaints and nonconformities so that the general public, if they're actually getting these reports and reading them, can have more confidence in our operations and how we handle things.
Also just say, so transparency and privacy are also a fine line too. To Dr. Rukumar's point, whatever, you know, should this pass, should you figure out how to deal with it? You know, you don't want to deter people from making complaints if they think that all of their business is going to be aired publicly. So that's something that you can think about in the process is in how you, if it were to pass and if you were to start doing this. So I guess, does anyone have any suggestions on how you would like to?
I think I would like to propose a motion for us to ask you kindly to give feedback to the legislator that we would recommend the number of days be changed.
60?
Yeah, excuse me, to 60.
Okay.
But I know before, is there anything else to that amendment that anyone would want to suggest before we open it to public comment?
I would add with the intent is overall support, right? So the representative or senator is putting this bill, our overall intent is support with just that amendment in the number of days.
So you're thinking, before we open up to public comments, you're thinking along the lines of supporting but requesting the change in days to 60. That's what you're thinking along the lines, but let's open it up now to public comment. Is anyone online? If you'd like to offer public comment, please raise your hand. Anyone in the room? Okay.
Dragovich motions that we support the language proposed and requests, with the request that the number of days be amended from 30 to 60.
Second.
Okay. We will do a roll call vote for this. Ms. Dragovich,
Yes.
Mr. Buford,
Yes.
Ms. Woolery,
Yes.
Dr. Arunkumar,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Drummond,
Yes.
Judge Hill,
Yes.
Ms. Hughes is absent, Dr. Hughes,
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill,
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre,
Yes.
Ms. Tucker,
Yes.
and Ms. Ward.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Does anyone need to take a few minute break before we move on? I know we already hit our time limit. We have 2 more items, I think. Is everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, next discussion and possible action item. Public Policy Subcommittee recommendation for complaint resource document.
So I'll start this. While it may seem like it's related, it's actually not. Independent, and before this legislation was proposed, introduced, the Public Policy Subcommittee was talking about, although again in response to the situation at AFTL, whether there would be value in creating a resource document that provides contact information for each ISO 17025 accredited lab all in one place, with the idea to put it on the website. So the document you have before you is the proposed document from the Public Policy Subcommittee.
Questions, discussion?
I thought this was a great idea. I really like it.
Okay, if there's nothing else, since this is a voting item, I'll open it up for public comment. Nothing here, nothing online. All right, then a motion.
Mary Ward, I move that we approve this document for adding to the website.
Just make the note that we do have some contact information that needs to be added still. So it will be, if this passes, it will be added once we get that information.
And also the ability to amend with the addition of any labs.
That too. Good catch.
This is Jill Baker, a second.
We'll do yet another roll call vote. Ms. Dragovich.
Yes.
Mr. Buford.
Yes.
Ms. Woolery. Yes. Dr. Arunkumar.
Yes.
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Ms. Drummond.
Yes.
Judge Hill.
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill.
Yes.
I missed going alphabetically. Dr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre.
Yes.
Ms. Tucker.
Yes.
Ms. Ward.
Yes.
Okay. That motion passes.
Okay, last issue for discussion and possible action, Quality Systems Subcommittee recommendation for response to the investigative report regarding the University of Illinois Chicago Analytical Forensic Testing Laboratory.
So what you have before you is a draft response from the Quality Systems Subcommittee. As you discussed at your previous commission meetings, the first step that the commission decided to take in response to the UIC AFTL testing situation was to review and possibly respond to the UIC report that was issued, that is published on AFTL's website. The Quality Systems Subcommittee completed its work on that and drafted this statement and recommendation. It is tailored to respond essentially to the 4 corners of the UIC report, as you discussed, because obviously there's other information out there. The root cause analysis isn't done. It is tailored to the 4 corners of the report and things discussed therein. The way it's organized is kind of just a brief introduction that is saying that it's responsive to the document, and the intent would be, if you were to approve this and put it on the website, would be to append the investigative report to the document so that readers would be able to look at both. Gives a little background on the report, and on the, how many times the subcommittee met, with endnotes that, you know, provide a link to the website that has minutes, because obviously, as it explains, this is not a complete or comprehensive list of concerns, observations, discussion topics that came up. So that is made clear. And then it goes into the statement portion where it conveys an overall position on the sufficiency of the UIC report. It then offers some comments on that, and basically a proposed position on the document in general. It then goes on page 2 to break down to address specifically 2 conclusions that were included in the report. And then to just basically list out 10 other observations, some of which are related to those 2 conclusions, some of which are not. And then it makes a recommendation at the end. Before everybody else jumps in, I will say that in general, to summarize the many meetings that went into reviewing this report and then also drafting this document, I think, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the priority was to think about what would be most important to end users, because this document is out there publicly. So what in the document was prioritized to pull out as far as observations and comments and information, that if this is the only document they're looking at, they might be led to believe something that is not consistent with what the subcommittee believes they should believe. To use believes twice in a sentence.
I think the subcommittee did an outstanding job on this report. I was really impressed with not only the amount of work, and I know the amount of work it took digesting that large report, summarizing it, pulling the pieces out. I think the subcommittee did a Herculean job, an outstanding job with summarizing this, pulling out the number of issues or concerns, and then giving a substantive recommendation at the end. I really appreciate the amount of work you guys did on this. I gotta say, I was really impressed with the fact that you were able to summarize it to this point. And I know it took a long time, so thank you for the amount of hours you all put in on this.
Can I also thank our subcommittee chairperson, Claire, who led us through this. I think the AFTO report is about 35 pages, and we went page by page, line by line. It took a long time, but there were lots of discussion points that I think sort of informed the subcommittee's process by doing it that way. As challenging as that process was, I came out of that at the end understanding more about that report, understanding more about the issues that we had to confront, and just want to thank Claire again for her leadership on this.
Thank you, Judge Hill. The whole group was great. And in particular, I'd like to highlight Amy Wetruba, who managed to put our thoughts into a cohesive document. That was not an easy task. So are there any questions or discussion about the content of the report anyone would like to discuss?
Obviously, then if you accept this, there are a few places where like dates and things like that have to be added. That would be added. I will say that, you know, an intent when drafting this together was to make it readable and understandable because to lots of stakeholders. So I'm hopeful that we achieved that as far as it making sense to scientists, it making sense to laypersons, it making sense to lawyers, which, you know, isn't always an easy task for all of us. So hopefully, since all those groups were represented on the subcommittee, if there were things that jumped out at anyone as, you know, this word choice was wrong, hopefully it'll be clear to the readers. And I do think it's an important document should you decide to approve it.
As a non-toxicologist, I could understand the letter or documents, so thank you.
Can I underscore one more thing? I know that we sort of highlighted two specific conclusions from the AFTL report, but we also include in our verbiage here on page 1, I think it is, that those two items were not the only items that we wrestled with, and that the public or whoever reads this, our statement should know that if they go back to the listed minutes from the dates of the quality systems subcommittee meetings where we talked about this, they'll get more information about the kinds of things that we were concerned about. So just want to be sure we underscore that.
Thank you, Judge, for highlighting that. It also makes clear that the commission's work in its examination of forensic testing, reporting, and testifying performed by AFTL will continue. This is just the initial report. So as the situation evolves, as you've stated before, you will continue to decide what actions you wish to take under your statute. Any more comments? Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. If anyone would like to offer public comment, please raise your hand on the WebEx or raise your hand in person. I have no one in person wishing to offer public comment, and I'm not seeing anyone online wishing to offer public comment. All right, hearing none, if someone would please make a motion.
This is Jill Baker. I make a motion to approve this document and post it on our website.
Jeff Buford, second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call again. Ms. Dragovich?
Yes.
Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Ms. Woolery?
Yes.
Dr. Runkemer?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Drummond?
Yes.
Judge Hill?
Yes.
Dr. Hughes?
Yes.
Ms. Ryhill?
Yes.
Mr. St. Andre?
Yes.
Ms. Tucker?
Yes.
Ms. Ward?
Yes.
I will make the comment here that given the importance of this document and the interest in this document, this will be the document I will be prioritizing to get up on the website as soon as possible. I'm hopeful that that will be tomorrow or Friday. As ever with IT, that is not something I control, but I have put in a previous request and notified the parties that are responsible for IT that I would likely at least have one document that I'd be pushing through for posting.
Is it also being sent to UIC?
Once it is posted, my intent at least was to send it to the individuals that we communicated with during the 2024 significant nonconformity process. That seemed appropriate.
Okay, do we have any housekeeping items?
I have a couple quick ones. First one is we had talked about possibly having a meeting in June in Chicago. That will not be possible based on the status of the lab. However, September may be possible, so stay tuned on that. And so the meeting in June will be here. However, it will be not in this room, but the room upstairs, 1619, because this room is occupied. That's the only housekeeping I had. I believe it's Wednesday, June 10th, 10 a.m. It will be here. It will also be available via WebEx.
At this point, we invite any members of the public who have any comment to raise their hand, let us know, so we can call on you for participation. We have no public comment in person. I am seeing none on the WebEx.
I also do not see any WebEx in the chat or by raising hands, so I think there's no public comment.
Okay, so our next meeting will be held June 10th at this same location, but on the first floor. And can I get a motion to adjourn?
This is Art Hill. I move that we adjourn.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, commission members, members of the public for joining us. We appreciate your attendance.